The Witcher series is fairly well known these days. You might enjoy The Witcher 3. So that's not what I'm going to talk about at all. I'm going to talk about the games you either can't enjoy or probably haven't. One in particular. Mobile exclusives. This isn't a deep dive critical look at anything. Most of this is just because I thought it was funny. Let's go.
Pleaded one.
So we all know The Witcher 1, 2, and 3, the mainline games. You might have also heard of Gwent. Out of those four, The Witcher 3 did especially well. Apparently, as of March 2023, the entire series has sold over 75 million copies. 50 million of which were The Witcher 3. And if you're on any game sale platform at all, you probably already know that The Witcher 1 and 2 are on sale for $1 and a slap on the back fairly often. So that probably helped just a little in that department. The Witcher 1 and 2 have their own quirks, and Gwent just didn't really jive with the general public. Maybe it was too niche, maybe it wasn't niche enough, who knows. But there were so many more games that nobody ever talks about because they failed miserably. Some deserved, some not so much. And not all of them are worth discussing in depth. For instance, did you know CD Projekt launched a MOBA-style mobile game for The Witcher at one point, called The Witcher Battle Arena? This happened before The Witcher 3 was released, so it didn't include any of the particularly important main characters of the saga, and a lot of message boards loudly complained about this new mobile game being a sign of the times, and The Witcher 3 would probably be bad because this mobile game existed.
Fascinating story.
And the game was bad. It was very bad. Here's the basic premise. You took control of one of the characters in the roster. Unfortunately, Geralt was not available during the initial beta launch, which was definitely a choice. Apparently adding Gollum as a playable character took precedence. Instead, Geralt was made available closer to the actual launch and when The Witcher 3 launched. The main game's physical copy came with a code to permanently unlock Geralt in Battle Arena. Down the line, they did add other big names too, like Yennefer, Triss, Ciri, and Eredin. Also, Troll and Vabjorn. Remember Vabjorn? He was introduced in this particular game and then he got a card in the standalone Gwent game, so no, he's probably not that known, but I promise he's great! John, we need to set up a launch roster for the MOBA of our extremely popular video game series. Of course. Put everyone in there. Everyone, of course. Except for the most important ones. Except for— what? Yeah, I don't want anyone to get distracted. You can have the main character eventually, but no one else. But what about the main character's love interest? Oh no, absolutely not. His best friend? Are you out of your mind? Can we at least put one of the two previous main characters in there? Oh, okay, but just one. Just one. I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my job. I hate my job. Make sure to add a sentient boulder. It's important to me, personally, and no one else. Once you picked your character, you got thrown into an arena where you either killed other characters or played out a little King of the Hill type struggle. It was a purely mobile experience, so that limited your options somewhat gameplay-wise. If you wanted to play a PvP match, the queues were desperately slow because not a lot of people were playing, and the connection to the server was often unstable. Bugs plagued the initial release, of course. Watching Letho of Gullah T-pose towards you must have been fairly menacing, at least. I can tell you the game looked dreadfully slow and samey, and I can tell you that I don't think they should have launched a whole mobile game with a lineup of characters most people didn't really know or care about. Except for Jorveth. Jorveth is great, and he should be in more things. But I haven't actually played the game myself because it released, and then it shut down. At such a fast pace, most Witcher fans had no idea it existed until it was too late. The Witcher Battle Arena launched on January 22nd, 2015. It shut down on December 31st, 2015. Yeah, it lasted less than a year. Although it really didn't seem like CD Projekt had a whole lot of faith in the game either way. It didn't even really have a tutorial. Instead, the game itself recommended that you watch a YouTube video to learn how to play. There was no friends list either, so you had to play with random players if you didn't like AI. One reviewer had their entire 6 hours of progress removed somehow. Oh, and the game also had microtransactions. Because of course it did. They were adamant that they would be cosmetic only, of course, but does that really matter when you shut down the game within a year after people already spent their money on it. They never even explained why the game got shut down so abruptly. Well, I'm sure we have our theories. They just posted a website page reading, "On December 31st, after millions of intense brawls, Battle Arena has shut its gates. Thank you for being with us. We hope you had fun playing. Thank you for the time spent together. The Battle Arena team." Supremely unhelpful for the people who had already spent money on the game itself, and I don't know that I believe the "millions of intense brawls" line either. In their initial shutdown announcement on November 13th, they did mention that anyone who had purchased items in the game could contact them to receive equivalent funds in their GOG wallet to spend in their game store. Offer stood until the 23rd of November. You had a whole 10 days. So Monster Arena was a flop, but that didn't stop CD Projekt from trying to break into the mobile market again in 2021 with The Witcher Monster Slayer. This one lasted a little longer, so you might have even played it. I certainly did. I played this game a lot. I played it an outrageous amount, which puts me in the unique position to be upset about it on a personal level, and upset I was. The Witcher Monster Slayer looked at Pokémon Go and said, "I'm going to do that, but I will do it very badly. You are a Witcher and you go outside to slay monsters and save people through quests. On the surface, that sounds great. That's exactly what you'd want out of a Witcher game. The execution, however, was utter dog..." Sorry, I have a PR department? The execution, however, left much to be desired. Let's start with the positives. The quest writing was actually fun. When I first started playing the game, I was excited to see where the quests would go. The quests were released in seasons, and I would take you through each season's story, but there was only one single season in the end. The quest line starts with your final Witcher exam. It serves as the tutorial. They teach you how the combat works, how to use oils, potions, and bombs, and then you get set out on the path on your own. Welcome to the Wolf School. The game would now show you little quest icons on the map. Just like Pokémon Go, it's a location-based AR game. That means it will generate events depending on your general location. Most of the quests would show up reasonably nearby, and all you had to do was walk over there and click the quest marker. Your first follow-up quest was Winged Bandit. This is where you meet your soon-to-be traveling companion and mobile game vendor, Thorstein. The quests give you some dialogue options, but they're not always particularly impactful. When you finish your quest, Thorstein gives you a map to your next quest, and so on and so forth. The quest dialogue is actually delightful most of the time, and when you do finish a quest, you get a little journal entry for it, and Thorstein is a fairly dependable Dandelion stand-in. At a certain point, you'll run out of railroaded quests a bit, and you can wander more. Decide which quests you want to do next, and some of these quests have specific ways of unlocking them. They can even have different endings. One of these quests, specifically, I had a major gripe with. It's called Sins of Our Fathers, and it's a Striga quest. Spoilers? For that game? Vesemir gives you this quest eventually, and he sends you off to meet a client about a contract. The client tells you it's a Striga, and you can tell him you might be able to lift the curse instead of killing the monster. This is the option I took, and the option I think most people took. One, because a Striga is really hard to kill, especially if you were doing all the quests one after the other. You probably weren't very high level, and you might have run out of consumables already too. And two, because it sounds more interesting. So you grab the materials to break the curse and make your way to the Striga's lair. At night. In the real world. This is where my Striga quest took me. Inside of a small park trail. Behind some mostly abandoned buildings. Next to a badly lit road. In the middle of the night! I'm not the only person who had this problem with this particular quest and general quest placement. Just putting you anywhere without regard for your surroundings. The Monster Hunter's Twitter account might no longer exist, but they cannot destroy the eternal threads of Reddit.
This quest had me loitering in front of a brothel for 45 minutes. LOL.
Can I finish it the next night? It's -5C.
There is third candle, so the waiting is 45 minutes.
Wow, and how did you feel about that?
I will not spend 45 minutes at night under somebody's house in shady part of town. This is just terrible design.
Then you are no Witcher.
I can't seem to find this lady that's supposed to check my elven statue. How do I find her?
Sorry, she got ran over on highway.
The issue isn't so much danger, more so that it's a highway. So I literally can't stay more than a moment.
Thankfully, no one called the cops on me because I've been walking around the same block for almost an hour last night. It was fun though.
Dude, my quest location was on a child's playground. Oh, absolutely. Either you can relocate to one hill, the other hill, private property, or heavy traffic. Your choice.
Add to the quests that are at night and out in areas with a high chance of stabbing.
Well, that's just immersion.
I just made a first quest. It was a hard journey. First time this game sent me to Flooded Cemetery, where no one risks to go. Then I changed my location to the nearby park and asked to change my quest location because it was too far. But the problem is park is located near the huge old forest on high hills and the quest was located deep in the forest. Okay, I said, I usually visit that forest, so it wasn't that hard. But I wasn't expecting one problem. When I reached the quest, suddenly dog appeared out of nowhere and started barking at me. So I rapidly accepted the quest and ran away to end the quest in the safer place. I was so happy to end the first part of the quest, but now quest sends me even... The game had a way to move quest locations, thankfully, but it involved you moving away from the current quest location a certain distance and then pressing the reset button. The quest would now respawn near your current location, randomly. Good luck. You could also cheat the game a little by just moving your phone's clock forward, but I think that trick says plenty about the quest design in general. But quests were not the only thing this game had to offer. Let's have a look at the gameplay you'd be dealing with the most. That being the combat. I actually think the combat was the most interesting part about this game. When you open the game, you'll see monsters spawned around you. Clicking the monster starts combat and opens up your preparation screen. Before each combat, you can switch out your sword, add potions, bombs, and Witcher oil depending on the type of monster you're fighting. Once combat actually starts, you can swipe the screen quickly for fast attacks or draw slow, long strokes for strong attacks. Some monsters are weak to fast, some to strong, and if you use the correct attack, you'll be allowed to land some critical hits too, in the shape of a timed click. You block by holding your finger down on the screen, and you cast signs by clicking sign and tracing the right symbol on the screen. Bombs are simple clicks. Each monster has different attack patterns, and when I played, I found that learning the timing on parries well for each one had the most impact other than simply tossing bombs out. To improve your combat capabilities, otherwise, you had to collect skill points to use in your skill tree. There, you could increase your damage done, what alchemy formulas you had access to, acquire the ability for perfect critical hits to stagger your opponent. Skill points are sourced from the usual, killing and quests. So your main gameplay loop in the game will be to tap any and all monsters you can find and kill them. When the game launched, killing a certain number of monsters would also net you a skill point, up to 3 times. It was honestly the best way to collect skill points at all. Initially, each monster's difficulty would be classified through skulls. No skulls were easy to kill for anyone just starting out. One skull was going to take some effort, especially if it was an Algul for some reason, and double skulls I didn't really manage until I grabbed a few skill points and got the hang of the parry system. Even then, I usually used at least a bomb or an oil. 3 skulls meant a full setup of my best bombs, oils, and potions, not just because they were hard to kill, but also because they would pretty definitely be rare spawns. So, how do you get oils, potions, and bombs? I'm glad you asked, Disembodied Voice. You got them through the Alchemy Station. This game's go away and wait a while system. You got a single one for free, and that one was unlimited use. If you've played Pokemon Go, you already know where this is going. The other crafting stations you could find were limited use, from 20 to 100. If you wanted to make a bomb, that bomb creation would take up a single crafting station for however long it took. 40 minutes for a basic bomb, 120 for every other bomb. Bombs took by far the longest to craft, probably because they were outrageously powerful in any fight, and if you had enough of the more powerful ones, you could brute force any fight with ease. Put a pin in that. The items you needed to craft these consumables weren't that hard to collect. They were general monster parts that dropped after you killed a monster, and herbs you could click in the overworld. The game also had an inventory limit, and yes, what you think will happen happened to everyone playing the game, unless they shelled out real-life money for an outrageous amount of alchemy stations. Our bags were absolutely bursting with potion ingredients, but we didn't have nearly enough stations to craft anything with it. You could, of course, also spend real money to buy more inventory space up to a certain point. And okay, let's just start talking about the cash shop now. The Witcher Monster Slayer was a free-to-play game. The developers actually reached out to me asking me to play the game. I told them I could absolutely not guarantee that I would enjoy the game or that I would even have anything nice to say about it. They didn't mind though, which I appreciate, so they sent me a little kit and some stuff to use in the game. One of those codes got me the starter pack. The starter pack would otherwise cost $5 through the store and include quite a few things. Most importantly, the shop was the only way to immediately obtain a silver sword. Yes, you were a Witcher without a silver sword unless you shelled out $5 immediately. It also contained 2 basic crafting stations, summoning scrolls to attract monsters, ingredients, and a ton of potions, oils, and bombs. Gold coins were the currency of the in-game shop. You could earn some by just playing the game, but it was slow going at the very start, so really, if you wanted to use the shop in any meaningful fashion, you'd be better off buying a few. 200 coins cost $1, 70,000 cost $100. Honestly, for $100, you'd be set for life in this game, at least at launch. The items in the store weren't prohibitively expensive, and as far as free-to-play games go, it was, at that point, the fairest I'd ever played, and I've unfortunately played too many. They didn't try to nickel and dime you at every turn. If you didn't want to spend money, you could generally get around doing so with a little bit of patience without ruining the experience completely. Put a pin in that too. The main other experience in the game was the Nemeton, a big glowing tree that would spawn a bunch of monsters for you to kill, and if you managed to live through it, you'd get a little reward. And that was your whole deal. Until they introduced a daily quest system that just told you to go do some general monster slaying. I enjoyed the game well enough up to a certain point, but this was a mobile game. Mobile games want you to play them every single day, and they want you to play them a lot. The problem with this game, in those terms, is that this is a single-player mobile game. The shareholders are going to riot. Pokemon Go has you find and fight gym battles against other players. You capture a powerful Pokemon, and then you take those Pokemon and beat up other Pokemon. Then you shove your Pokemon to the big tower for other people to beat them up, and when I say it like that, it doesn't really sound like a kid's game, does it? Regardless, Monster Slayer doesn't have any systems like that. You can't shove your Witcher into a big tower to beat up other people's Witchers. You can't join Witcher leagues to pit your Witcher against other Witchers. You can't go on big monster hunts together so your Witcher can join other Witchers to take down a really big monster. And as much as I love my solo experiences, you cannot keep a mobile game of this kind alive for long without multiplayer combat. The most multiplayer this game ever got was the ability to send each other little packages every day, like the gifts in Pokemon Go, except usually those packages would contain more monster materials or herbs. You know, the thing your pockets are already overflowing with to the point you have to delete them by the handfuls. So once you'd killed every monster, finished every quest, climbed every mountain, and followed every byway, there was absolutely no reason to keep playing this game. This was a mobile game you could complete. They promised more quests and new monsters, but in the end, a dedicated player could complete those fairly quickly, and if you can't monetize your free-to-play game, there's no reason for it to exist as far as the boss is concerned. That's when the patches started rolling out, and not just to fix the many bugs that the game came with. The game launched with its fair share of bugs, painfully usual for games nowadays, but one of them really broke the game in a very direct way. Some people, not all, would complete the tutorial and immediately hit level 40, the level cap, a huge grind otherwise. As I mentioned though, the game largely functioned as a single-player experience, and it seemed like Spocko felt the same way, because they didn't reset any of the affected players. They got to keep their level 40 characters. But alright, they fixed the bug, and the next patch, 1.1, introduced new monsters, better weather system information, timed tasks, so you had something to aim for each week, on top of daily hunts for small rewards. More daily contracts each day, and more general bug fixing. Both daily contracts and daily hunts were just your run-of-the-mill dailies. Kill X number of these monsters, craft some basic oil, that sort of thing. All very inoffensive stuff. And nothing happened for a good long while. And then, patch 1.2 dropped. This is where everything imploded. The skill tree was gone now. One of the main things you as a player had any control over was changed into the path. An automatic skill level up system. No input on your end required. The alchemy stations were changed as well. Instead of the usual charges, they now had durability. Each station started with 100 points and could eventually be repaired up to 1,000 points. Your crafts would use those points depending on how strong the craft was. The cheapest cost 5 points, and if you crafted nothing but those, your station wasn't necessarily nerfed. But if you crafted anything more expensive, Congratulations, you got scammed. They also introduced enemy scaling because people were starting to kill monsters a little too easily. Bombs and oils weren't really necessary after a certain point, and the team didn't love to see it. They wanted you to use your items. This meant that you would never really feel substantially more powerful after leveling over time. But it also meant that they had no idea how balancing worked. When the patch launched, common monsters would suddenly require alchemy to kill. Regular ghouls needed potions and oils. And it doesn't end there. Perfect parries now no longer fully blocked damage, just 50% of it. Getting good had a lot less of an impact on the combat at this point, because learning to perfect parry every monster was one of the best ways to defeat enemies technically out of your level range. But the most egregious change, the one that turned practically everyone save a few very devoted fans against them, was the addition of crystals. The in-game shop had used gold since the very start of the game. Gold was the only currency, nice and simple. But nice and simple doesn't make money, that's why most freemium games have about 50 different currencies. To confuse you and cause you to spend more money, because whatever currency pack you bought wouldn't be quite enough to get what you want, but you always had a few coins left after buying something anyway. And now, Monster Slayer added a new currency: crystals. Worse, gold was made absolutely and completely useless. If you had bought gold previously, congratulations, you just got scammed. Again, don't worry though, for a limited time only you could exchange 1,000 gold for a whole 50 gems, for a limited time only, as a gesture of good faith. John, the game is bleeding money, we need a strategy adjustment. Take everyone's stuff in order to... in order to amuse me. But the stockholders? And then add a really expensive new currency. Maybe adding some new content to... No! Content! Before patch 1.2, gold was plentiful, and experience was mostly meaningless after a certain level. With the crystals, the shop prices went up as well. The change to the skill system meant most people lost a few skills here and there, unless you were already max level. And if you were about to level up before the patch, you lost all that experience, and bombs were now a crystal-only item. You could no longer craft them. The change to perfect parries was listed under gameplay fixes. Swords and armor was now in a rotation in the shop, instead of everything being available at once. The biggest saddlebags, the inventory slot increase items, now cost something to the tune of $100. The endless crafting station was also gone because the update had made the alchemy stations repairable, so that first station you got, use some crystals to fix it when it breaks. If you had extra paid-for crafting stations before the patch, they got removed and you'd be reimbursed a pittance. Someone lost 20 crafting stations and was given 250 crystals. It costs 200 crystals to buy a crafting station, 400 for a second one. Increasing inventory space was now more expensive, but the patch added more different types of items to clog your inventory with. Most of their communication came in through the Discord or Reddit or Twitter or something or the other, not in the game itself, and all too often, the time windows for certain events were very small. The Nematon now required level 30 to do instead of level 10, and only got tuned back to level 20 after people started complaining. The potions and oils were also changed in an effort to make the new way of crafting a little more manageable. They now lasted a set amount of time instead of being single use per monster, but they didn't last an especially long time. And the monsters you killed during that time would generally barely cover the potion ingredients, not to mention the use of an alchemy station. But with the new combat system changes, you kinda needed to use potions and oils for every single monster. The bestiary was also changed, where before you could complete the bestiary by killing each monster a number of times, the new patch made it so that each monster was almost infinitely farmable for coins and crystals. The crystals only coming from rare and legendary monsters, of course. Some commons didn't cap out until you passed 1,000 kills, so if you'd already killed each monster once, well, most people considered that done. This patch removed choice and skill in practically any form from the game, in favor of just buying bombs from the cash shop. Bombs had always been extremely powerful, and now we couldn't craft them anymore. Perfect parries were a joke, we couldn't pick our own talent points, we didn't have a choice in whether we used consumables at all, and to top it all off, new quests were not at it. The update was meant to keep people from hoarding things like oils, potions, and bombs, but now people didn't use their bombs at all because they cost real money, and they didn't want to waste them. Most people considered not playing the only way to win because killing monsters cost more resources than it brought in, unless you used the cash shop. And then there were the bugs. I already mentioned a fairly egregious launch bug, but there were so many. Their server maintenance would almost always take double the announced length, so much so that it turned into something of a running joke, only for the Play Store updates to bug out and infinitely loop updates. Quests would have a whole variety of bugs on the regular, including crashes to black screens, or general crashes being fairly common. Some quests just didn't trigger their next phase no matter what. The complete quest button refused to work in a lot of cases. Skill points being uncollectible, monster kills not registering, especially tedious if you just found a legendary, the app getting stuck on loading screens, the Will-O-the-Wisp quest getting included in every single patch note for bug fixes, but never actually being fixed, purchasing coins through the shop but the coins not appearing even though they took your money, and or the game just refusing to load after spending any amount of money in the cash shop. You'd think this would be a fairly high priority problem, wouldn't you? Frame drops, weather bugs, endless waiting for server response screens, and customer support was apparently abysmal throughout it all. Although I thankfully never had to deal with it. But hey, they did make the wait time for the Striga quest shorter in this iteration, bless them. After the 1.2 patch, the game's community exploded in collective outrage. The devs said, "Oops, no, we'll fix it, really, we will," and then proceeded not to really do that. They posted an update on their site regarding patch 1.2. Yesterday, we released an update for The Witcher Monster Slayer that included an array of changes which altered the user experience in a variety of ways. This prompted many of our active players to give us feedback. Thank you to everyone who provided their thoughts. Spocko, we all have eyes that can read Reddit. Feedback is a very generous way of putting it, but some people were having fun with it.
Witcher Diary, day 1372. The locals' peasants are becoming restless over my recent refusal to continue to deal with the Bruxa infestation. I try to explain that slaying them no longer has a justifiable return on investment, but I don't think they understand.
The only good thing about this update that they finally fixed the Will-O-Wisp quest. XD.
Update? Ooh, did they finally fix the constant crashes? They did not.
Happy celebrations! I deleted my account today.
They proceeded to explain that they just wanted people to feel challenged in the game. Things had gotten too easy. Too many people were hoarding items. They conveniently omitted bombs when they talked about alchemy and item hoarding. And a very short, non-explanatory, "Finally, there's the game economy. We had to adjust how it works to cater to all these changes and the difficulty increase we wanted to roll out." Oh, okay. Anyway, they wanted players to participate in testing the game from here on out. It didn't change anything, either because none of the feedback was taken on board or because it was simply too late. Personally, I dropped the game after 1.2 and only checked back in here and there to see if anything had changed at all. Patch 1.3 hit, and it added auto-equipping bombs, so you can accidentally waste them on fights. Finally having the ability to change your language after the game had been out for at least a year, special events, minor bug fixes, and the option to delete your account. The latter was probably the most used one. The special events were seasonal celebration events consisting of a list of timed tasks for whatever we were celebrating. Ironically, the game's birthday first. Tasks that were very hard to complete without using a ton of items. Tasks that would reward you with a piece of armor by the very end. A reward that bugged out for a number of the people that did complete that gauntlet of tears, so they couldn't even collect it. The update also broke the friends list for a lot of people, even though they added special birthday packs to send to your friends. They also added the Llamas events, unique monster spawns that would only be active for 2 days each, and at specific times and places. The first spawn could only happen for about 2 hours a day for those 2 days. And then they celebrated Velen, and it was a list of timed tasks, blah 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 blah, you get the point. Weekly events had been added a good while ago, but I didn't consider it worth mentioning because they sucked. In Pokemon Go, the special events cause a certain Pokemon to spawn in massive numbers. You get to go out and catch as many as you can, get all their evolutions, collect shinies. In The Witcher, the weekly events would target a single monster that, for a lot of people, just never showed up, because these monsters still adhered to their normal spawn behavior. If you lived in a rural area, or if your direct area had weird land designations, you would never see these monsters. Bonus points if the monster in question required specific weather conditions, and unfortunately you had nothing but bright sunny days all week long. They had some more minor patches with bug fixes and so on, just utterly meaningless to be quite honest. By this point, the subreddit for the game had all but died and gone to heaven, or probably hell in this case. Most of the posts were just weekly monster challenge announcements and questions about bugs that were still around after all this time. The people genuinely passionate about the game's future had long since given up on being heard. Unsurprisingly, the server shutdown announcement came shortly after. Now, the Reddit turned into cosplay pictures, Fallout 3 Let's Plays, merch posts, and one extremely dedicated individual still trying to speedrun the game. They'd only just discovered it and aggressively posted their journey for the Reddit to follow, including some useful infographics that the community had already created at launch. Godspeed, Snakegore999. The game shut down on the 31st of January 2023. It did not reach their business expectations.
I didn't even realize this game exists.
Same here.
Same.
I just learned this was a thing, so good job marketing it.
Of course not. Why did they ever think this was a good idea?
I didn't know this was a thing.
It didn't reach your business expectations because unfortunately, it was poorly thought out and poorly executed from the very beginning. And also, you weren't great at the marketing aspect of it. Mobile games, I'm so sorry, are created to make a lot of money cheaply and easily. Compared to full PC or console releases, mobile games cost pennies to make. And free mobile games like Monster Slayer are then heavily monetized through extremely obnoxious cash shops. Limited time offers, a million different currencies, timed events, and random loot chances. Monster Slayer, to their credit, set out to be different. They didn't want any of that. They wanted a fair game with a fair cash shop. They wanted the people playing the game to be able to do everything for free, given enough time. That is genuinely commendable. But it only works if you then give that community other ways to support you, and if you give them reason to want to do so. Good intentions are all well and good, but a company still has to make money. The biggest problem they ran into in the long run was just the lack of content. The game could end, and without anything remotely multiplayer related, what else was there to do but log off? Even if patch 1.2 hadn't happened, the game would have died eventually. Patch 1.2 seemed like a move born of desperation. They realized that this wasn't a sustainable model, but it was too late. You can't pull the rug from under people like that and not expect them to get angry. Instead of 1.2's crystal and balancing fiasco, they should have added new things to spend money on, instead of changing the cost of existing features. Taking things away from people never works. And I can't believe the words that are coming out of my mouth right now, but here it is. If your game wasn't financially viable because people weren't using the shop, why didn't you just use ads? Watch an ad for some gold or a bomb or two. Battle passes, cosmetics, literally anything but what you did. People were asking the team to add a functional respec potion to the shop for real money, a way to change their talent points. You know, the original system that they destroyed in 1.2. People wanted to give Spocko money for changing their talent points. And then Spocko removed the reason to respec at all by removing the talent tree. It almost felt deliberate at that point. And why wasn't there any form of multiplayer? The Witcher lore has different schools, but they don't appear in the game. You could have had people pick a school when they made their character. Pit the schools against each other in a race to kill the most monsters every so often. Add cosmetics that are specific to whatever school wins, and then sell those for the losing schools. Because your character also had very little customization options, to be frank. The Reddit itself gave Spocko so many interesting options for events, for storylines, and for ways to give them money. I know I sound like a broken record, but I cannot emphasize this enough. We were begging Spocko to give us any half-decent excuse to give them our money. But Spocko saw some of those suggestions, and I know they did because they responded to one of them and thanked them for the suggestion, and then proceeded to do nothing with them. What we wanted were quests. That's what most people signed up for. A mobile Witcher game that gave us a Witcher experience. And what is The Witcher, in large part? stories. And the few quests we got, while not stellar in writing, were fun to do. They just weren't nearly enough for the time frame. What we were left with was a mobile game that encouraged walking to look for monsters, but mostly standing still if you found one that was difficult to fight. A mobile game that asked you to walk while paying full attention to your phone. You can throw Pokeballs in a fairly absent-minded manner. That wasn't always the case here. Worse, some of those quests asked you to trespass or put your life in potential danger. You'd think they'd have learned from Pokemon Go's crowds in the graveyard fiasco. But then that's the running theme, isn't it? A complete lack of learning.
Spocko doesn't listen. Spocko says they listen, but Spocko doesn't listen. I don't know if CD Projekt had any kind of direct influence in their making of the game, but CD Projekt also doesn't have a stellar listening to feedback track record when it comes to online games, so nobody was listening to the actual players of the actual game. Spocko kept making announcements about other announcements eventually coming in the future while using outrageous amounts of emojis in their titles, but nothing interesting ever actually happened. This game was fun when it launched. I enjoyed it. I liked walking around the world, collecting trophies. I liked seeing where the quests went. But even at launch, I and many others put some question marks around their monetization strategy. We expected ads and cosmetics, the usual least intrusive freemium model, but they never came. Spocko wanted to be better, but you can only support idealism if you found a suitable alternative. The community gave them those alternatives, but they never materialized. I'm not saying companies should always listen to their players. The players don't always know what they want either, and sometimes their requests are completely unreasonable. But I don't think that was the case here. The Reddit posts might have devolved into "this game is dead" posts eventually, but initially everyone was interested and hopeful. The people playing wanted this game to succeed. And with the way content was released, it became quite clear that the game's release schedule was truly and utterly plowed. So, what have we learned today? We've learned that Snakegorn999 is a very driven individual, and I hope they're having a great day. Vafail.
And the few quests okay, nope, we're gonna have to pause for that. What we were left with was a mobile game that encouraged walking to look for monsters, but also wind. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Why am I recording under a tree? What an incredibly bad idea. A mobile game that asks you to walk while wind blows. We'll wait until this person is done walking past because is it weird to stand here with a horse head?
No.
Talking to a camera? No?
No.
Winds howling.